Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GCD. Yeah, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GCD. Yeah, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze.
Boom!
Howdy, folks. Your host Double J back here, coming at you live from my studio/RV dining room, located directly inside America. Welcome back, folks, to the interwebs. Once again, JJ Vance here, host of Operation GCD, and perhaps more notably, not the vice president. Anyhow, welcome back, folks, to the interwebs. I will be your pilot and navigator for tonight's shenanigan-infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. Yes, and welcome back all folks to the interwebs, to Operation GCD for the first time. Anyhow, I'm not going to lie to you folks to the interwebs. Thanks for joining me here tonight on a Thursdaze on Saturday here. I'm not going to lie to you, got a real barn burner here on deck for y'all tonight. So thanks for joining me here. We got The Anatomy of Satanic Panic, Volume 9, starring everyone's favorite Green Beret Psychological Operations Satanic Nazi Muppet Man, Colonel Mikey Aquino. Good to see you there, Rye. Codega's Codex of Curiosities. Had a couple barn burner conversations over there with Ryan recently. So folks can go check those out on the Operation GCD feed. And I highly recommend folks check out Rye's podcast over there too at the Codega's Codex of Curiosities. So as we're going through these matters here on the Satanic Panic, Lionel Dahmer hypnosis. Yeah, I mean, West H hypnosis is an ongoing trend with all of these matters, is it not? So as we're doing this free Patreon preview here tonight, yes, sus, keeping it sus 24/7. Thank you, Lucy. Once again, as we're unpacking these matters here on the Patreon side, I highly recommend folks check out the remainder of the show, and we're building upon each previous show here on the Anatomy of Satanic Panic. Patreon.com/Operation GCD. You'll also find the link in the show notes. No preview runs the whole episode, JJ. I don't know about that, sir. Yes, sir. Right. Good to see you there, bud. Anytime. So we're unpacking these matters. We've gone over most recently the 1975 flap that all of these current propagandists, the first time the Satanic Panic was in the media, it happened to coincide, as we saw last week, with the evangelical movement. We're going to be building upon those concepts a little bit here as we do an analysis of the 1980 flap, which starts with Michelle Remembers the book, the psychiatrist that wrote the book about hypnosis and, Satanic Panic stuff about as far as ritual abuse, satanic murders. This was the controlled opposition effort at the time that was rolled out in phase 2 of this psychological operations. And we can see that in it's, exhibited by the Michelle Remembers psychiatrist Lawrence Patster being hired by Charles Manson's friend, Ira Reiner, over there at the LA District Attorney's office. And they're the ones who shut down the McMartin case. So, and that's where we see in the, the telemarketing script, if you will, as we point out, and these propagandists, that is, they say, well, there's no evidence. That's always the first one. We've seen in, for example, that Geraldo primetime special in recent weeks, we've analyzed numerous times, where there is evidence, even in that special. But we see in that special, they use that special as to say, look, there was this big primetime event back in 87, 3 channels, everyone was watching, 3 channels on TV at the time, no cable, right? ABC, NBC, CBS, right? Everybody was watching this, right? Big event. And then, they had evidence in there. We watched the detectives, the politicians in some of these cases, even Maury Terry with drawings of the children in sexual ritual abuse, right? Drawing ritualistic circumstances, the symbols on the robes and whatnot, the candles. But everyone points to these events, and we have more of that tonight here when the folks are pointing these things. Now, as we've noticed, the propagandists don't want to mention all that 75 flap and whatnot. The folks like John Todd and Mike Warnke, and that thrived in the evangelical movement, claiming to be former satanic priests and later outed as, fraudsters, and in Todd's case, a kid diddler and rapist, and was an occultist the entire time for decades, apparently. So we see all these things, kind of this throughput of these activities, and how, it kind of evolves, and when things don't work out, or when, there's kid diddling rapists on your team, they're like, well, we can't mention that guy anymore. So we see that going on. And then we see in the telemarketing script also there, they go, no evidence. We've seen examples of the evidence. They say, oh, Michelle remembers. Oh, that's been discredited. Well, we've unpacked how that was intentionally discredited and rolled out to do so. And again, used to shut down the McMartin case there in Los Angeles County, hired by Charles Manson's friend, the district attorney. Now, he's not the man who brought the charges on the case. The previous district attorney did. And his press conference, as we saw, cited child pornography as being a major factor in that McMartin situation amongst the satanic ritual abuse. So then they say, well, you believe in McMartin? What, do you believe in tunnels? You're a moron. Well, we've seen how that's not true. We see how they have tunnels. There was a dig, and, we see the people that try to claim responsibility for even hiring the archaeologists, old Ted Gunderson.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
They got Ted twice. Maybe he was hiding out in those McMartin tunnels that don't exist. So, according to the propagandist, right? Then the telemarketing script goes, oh, well, then the FBI looked into it in 92, chronologically speaking. FBI looked into it. There's no evidence. So we see these things being repeated. It's the same telemarketing script established by Michael Aquino in that Geraldo episode in 87, repeated by Michael Aquino in numerous writings after that, and in those email communications that we unpacked with author Dave McGowan. Back in August of 2001, McGowan and Aquino writes McGowan, all butthurt, talking about, you're spreading satanic panic with all of this talk about satanic serial killers and satanic ritual abuse. And we've unpacked how that goes around all the Satanism shit, Satanic Murder Inc. with these serial killers. We're doing some broad analysis on these matters. We're going to do that again here tonight when we're unpacking the propaganda around the 80s flap here, right? Because again, I think it's important to note here that these Nazi Satanist propagandists, and we're going to analyze some new ones tonight, they don't want to point to, the evangelical Warren Key Todd situations, right, from 75, which we also saw with the epicenter of that activity in Colorado, Denver, Colorado, 1975, was the cattle mutilations involving Mike Warnke. He inserted himself into that as well. This evangelical fake former Satanist priest, as he claimed, etc. So, and he was outed many years ago in 1991. So then we see the 92 Lanning report roll out, and then actually we see an evolution in the third flap of the propaganda, and that is in 1993, right after these circumstances. So we're really going to be analyzing the activities and stuff around the propagandists, their statements on flap number 2 around circa 80 to 91, 92 there. And then also the other thing I think is important to note there, folks of the interwebs, is that, they keep repeating no evidence, but as we see there is evidence, right? And we can also see the onset of activity of this more public satanic situations in 75, right? So, we do have the ability to look back now and unpack these ideas and matters and have a better understanding of these things and see. And I think it's very, very reasonable to see the machinations behind these things when we start unpacking them like that. Because again, everyone's saying the same thing as literally, they should just call it the Mikey Aquino telemarketing script, Satanic Panic telemarketing script, because it is the same statements he repeated himself on Geraldo and again to Dave McGowan that we unpacked. And again, it's the same statements that Aquino made in that podcast interview that we unpacked. In the year or two before he allegedly died a few years back, he did that interview where he's, making the same telemarketing script points. So we'll be focusing on some of those aspects here tonight. And one of the other matters we saw also last week with John Todd, specifically the evangelical 75 movement of the Satanic Panic propaganda campaigns, was the introduction of satanic influences through the music and Dungeons and Dragons, right? And it even spawned, if you recall, that fantastic scene from Tom Hanks standing on top of the World Trade Centers, claiming he can fly.
Robbie! Pardue, what are you doing?
Going to join the Great Hall.
You can't. It's a trap.
I have spells. I'm going to fly.
You don't have enough points. I am the maze controller.
Maze control?
Yes. And I have absolute authority in this game.
So we see that was the product of John Todd's campaign and that evangelical movement of flap number one and his propagandas back there in the late 70s, traveling America with folks like that Mike Warnke fellow we discussed last week's show. Whereas they're the ones introducing these concepts of Dungeons and Dragons or satanic influences on the youth. And I'm not saying it's not, but again, it's the controlled opposition thereof. And we see that same controlled opposition with the music, as we've covered in the past, the Parents Music Resource Center. And this gets rolled out there in the early 80s, right? I believe the initial onset's 83. By 85, they're testifying in Congress, telling us that Ozzy Osbourne's not a satanic musician, despite the fact that he proclaims to be a satanic musician, self-proclaimed, and dedicates songs in which, not the least of which, is Mr. Crowley, right? So these matters are controlled opposition in the respect that this is financed by the Beach Boys, back to Charles Manson and his friends, right? That's who financed the Parents Music Resource Center. So that's the controlled opposition. So I'm not saying that there's not, as we kind of broadly covered last week, I'm not saying there's not satanic influences in the music, right? What I'm saying though is it is the fact that these things are controlled and used as such to control the opposition in these narratives that we're propagandized with across the American public and, quite honestly, the Western world at large. Because as we just saw old Uncle Ted there, Ted Gunderson, well, I mean, if you just go to, for example, if you just go to Wikipedia, right, the source of all information on the interwebs, it recites basically the same talking points of the Aquino, psyops to mind war, satanic panic telemarketing script. But when I say it really affects the Western world at large, I mean, we see old Uncle Ted's friend we met last week, Anthony J. Hilder, who started the rumors or propaganda, I would argue, that old Ted Gunderson was poisoned. And we saw last week Hilders did that by interviewing a Knight of Malta, literally a Knight of Malta, to say that Ted Gunderson had been poisoned. So call me very circumspect on those those tales of a Knight of Malta and this Hilder fella, and basically anyone who was friends with Ted Gunderson. But on that note, we see Hilders in, the BBC makes a lot more documentaries about these subjects than we do in America. The Franklin scandal, which we've covered, Aquino rears his ugly head there too, right? And some witness statements and whatnot. And then we see Ted Gunderson's there in the aftermath to come sweep shit up, and we see Colby's Queers, the Phoenix program come home, satanic serial killers, and the drug trafficking of Air America and Operation Gladio, all brought to us by former CIA director Bill Colby and some of his friends, but notably he's the central figure. And we see one of his folks is deeply ingrained in the Franklin scandal and teams up with Ted later. That is Major Green Beret, U.S. Army Special Forces Major John DeCamp. So, these are this is a well-organized, well-financed campaign to convince everyone to not believe their senses, right? That is the satanic panic. It was real. There was a satanic panic organized, manufactured, and induced upon the public to ignore their senses and not pay any attention to the real-world satanic murders or the real-world satanic ritual abuse going on then, and still apparently by all evidence and exhibits going on still today. So had this been an issue of there's no evidence, then why, not only is there evidence, it's ongoing evidence, right? Ongoing evidence. And again, it's those presentations like that Geraldo show where folks, point to that. They point to Ted. They're like, oh, well, look at that guy. He's making up shit about tunnels, even though, again, there's been a archaeological report from the, or survey report from the UCLA Archaeological Department hired by parents of the McMartin case. Since 1993, it's been public. Ted went around. We saw on his website. He put he revised the report, put his own cover sheet on it, and his own resume before it. So, should tell you a lot about old used car salesman Ted. But in these talking points, also, besides, let me find that clip on Ted's buddy, because it is strange. It is strange. We see a lot of more of these productions from the BBC. In regards to the Franklin scandal, there was a BBC production team that did a documentary on it back in the 90s called Conspiracy of Silence. In regards to the Franklin scandal, which involved the Boys Town, politicians, police chief was named, the head of the Omaha, Nebraska newspaper was named by numerous witnesses. This went on to the callboy scandal in D.C. through Henry Vincent, as noted and written about by Nick Bryant, and largely revolved around Lawrence King, a man who walks amongst the public today. And according to Nick Bryant's blog, we've gone over some of that here in the past as well. He's been responsible for making sure Lawrence King has no access to children because for some reason he keeps getting access to children. But we see the BBC did a documentary back in the 90s. It got shut down here in America, but it's available on the interwebs, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But my point there is it's a little bit odd that, in the land of the free and the home of the brave here, freedom of speech, America, the BBC has a seemingly more, productions, on these matters and including interviewing folks like Ted Gunderson's buddy. So I'm not saying they're necessarily more honest or objective. I'm just saying they're at least producing stuff on these topics where here in America, there is no evidence. We don't see anything. Again, we have an 87 Geraldo special, and Geraldo's used, I think, in many regards, again, as a controlled opposition to make things look ridiculous. I mean, I'm sure not everyone, but I'm sure many folks recall the infamous incident where he's going to go open up the Al Capone safe or whatever live on TV and it's empty. So these things were made to make him look ridiculous, and anything he does look ridiculous. But speaking of ridiculous, let's check out Ted's friend from that Gunderson, that is, from that BBC documentary in circa 1989. And he's just, talking more satanic panic stuff. So I ask you again, why do all these folks know each other that perpetrate these same false narratives? If it's not a well-organized, well-machined, well-financed, that is as well, campaign of satanic panic to perpetrate on America, psyops to mind more style, courtesy of Muppet Mikey Aquino, well, then I'm not sure what it is, folks.
In their Lord, Lucifer. They expect to have a satanic society. There's no question about that.
The Bible says that in the last days there will be 10 world rulers. These 10 men will be of one mind. They will give all of their strength unto the beast. 666.
Oddly enough, one group will regard this.
The beast, 666. So, we get, that's an older documentary, obviously, but we haven't really progressed in any kind of productive fashion on these topics. I mean, these are the same talking points again. The Muppet Mikey Aquino telemarketing script that we get out of 2023 documentaries, Satan Wants You, that we get out of 2024 highly produced, well-financed podcasts, The Devil Within You. That's a common tactic we see here, victim blaming. The devil within you. You think there's satanic panic? Well, that's because you're a fucking devil, buddy. And you got some dark shit in you if you think there's a satanic panic going on, because there is no satanic panics, right? Satanic panics, there's no evidence. That's all we hear time and time again. There's no evidence. And, it's quite comical, but it is that telemarketing script, I think, is very evident to not only the parties involved, but the machinations therein. And as a result of which, we get ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Just Google search anything satanic panic on YouTube and just watch. We'll watch this one for like a minute. The ridiculous statements people make. It's as if they don't know how to do any research, or are intentionally not doing it, or they're being paid to produce these videos in a well-organized, well-crafted propaganda campaign, the likes of which is organized by, a public relations firm. Kind of like that Hill Knowlton public relations firm that brought America Desert Storm. Those are the folks that were hired by apparently the Kuwaiti royal family to have the Kuwaiti, a member of the Kuwaiti royal family, the daughter of the then Kuwaiti ambassador to America. His daughter there portrayed herself as a nurse from a Kuwait hospital that claimed Iraqi soldiers were spiking babies on the ground, and they got the whole Nancy Grace effect, dead babies on this is in Congress, televised to everyone back, was this 1990, 91, circa. It turns out all bullshit. It was the Kuwaiti royal family. It was the daughter of the ambassador. She was not a nurse. She had not witnessed any such activities, but this was the pretense in which America got into the conflict we now know as Desert Storm and Desert Shield, whatever that was all about. But when I see all these matters today on YouTube's, I'm like, well, yeah, they got a nice PR company behind all this. And these folks, they may in fact be idiots and dum-dums, but I'm not here to judge them. What I am saying is they're paid propagandists, it appears.
Panic was a moral hysteria that swept across America from the late 1970s to the early 1990s. This panic didn't just impact small communities.
There you go. She's not incorrect. It has framed and shaped many aspects of our society and legislations for decades. I mean, again, I try to use the Nazis, Satanists like Aquino or LaVey, or the Wiccans, as we saw with Buckland and Gardner, offshoots of Thelema, ball washers of Crowley. And apparently, we've seen LaVey using the term witch to describe himself. So I'm happy to use these folks' own words in their own proper context as they purport them. And, as we look at matters such as these, I mean, like, again, is that lady dumb? Is she getting paid? What's going on there? But it has framed a lot of these things. And the way that the folks today frame that framework in which the Satanic Panic has caused some legislations in this country, it's kind of ridiculous. It's really kind of ridiculous. And we see in other incidents out of the state of Idaho where they've had a lot of satanic activity, not the least of which Thomas Eugene Creech, that fellow that they couldn't execute. They tried to execute him, didn't work out. And then he's not going to get executed now, apparently. But, the guy that did the same thing that Edward Wayne Edwards did, but he did it 10 years after Ed, they're in Idaho, murders and robberies, marrying a 17-year-old in Idaho Falls, that kind of thing. Yeah, Ed did it in 59. I think he actually did it in 58, but nonetheless, 58, 59. And then Thomas Eugene Creech, 10 years later. Now, of course, Eugene Creech, as we saw Michael Aquino's site, was there at the Church of Satan, Black House there of LaVey's in San Francisco beforehand. And again, he's not the only one, but we do see a lot of activity in Idaho. And again, Thomas Eugene Creech and Ed Edwards, both just like Charles Manson, all were at the Chillicothe Reformatory on a mound in Chillicothe, Ohio. And I do think they were likely inducted into some sort of Operation Chaos type programs, because we see Ed Edwards there, that is, the serial killer you probably never heard of, in his own book claiming to be a secret CIA dude. In his FBI file, he's narking out the Rosenberg spy ring of Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. He's deeply ingrained in narking out commies. I don't necessarily disagree with that, obviously, but then Ed goes on to have multiple identities, committing crimes and murders across America, even getting arrested numerous times under the name Dr. James Garfield Langley, which he received by his own admission in Key West, Florida in November of 55, the same time the CIA was documented in photographs in Key West with Castro plotting the overthrow of the Batista regime. So Eugene Creech, probably a lot similar. But in regards to Idaho, we see an Idaho news outlet, be like, oh, well, all of this Satanic Panic stuff caused this one law to help protect children, and fuck these people, blame the victims.
All right, well, Halloween and its connection to the unholy goes back almost as long as the holiday itself. After all, it began, Halloween that is, as a 9th century Gaelic festival, a pagan religious celebration. But it wasn't long before Halloween became inundated with ghosts and ghouls and demons, and pretty soon, pagan became something to do with Satan, which brings us to this. Idaho has a satanic law in its books. Well, it's more of an anti-satanic ritual law. But back in the fall of 1989, there was a baby girl found dead near the town of Rupert. The baby was found burned inside a metal box. Almost immediately, a rumor began to spread and became very popular. The little girl, unidentified and known as Baby X, was killed and mutilated as part of a ritual by a local satanic cult, the rumor said. Think black-robed figures sacrificing animals and children. It was the 80s, right? And the country was in the middle of the satanic panic. And soon, county prosecutors and local police got involved. So did psychologists and Christian groups, claiming demonic worship was all the rage in southern Idaho.
There we go. We saw them repeating some of those same talking points. I said psychiatrist, Lawrence pastor before psychologist. He's right. Evangelical movement. He's like, that's when all these Christians got involved and made it a real panic. Again, and whether or not he may be a dum-dum, he's a news guy. So much like, I think they're all like Ron Burgundy. You put anything on the screen, they're going to read it. But, his ideas, again, he says the whole no evidence claim, right? And again, we have specifically to satanic ritual abuse, that case is interesting. As we're going over the unpacking of the propaganda and broadly going over some of these cases, we'll be going deeper into some of these cases. That one's very interesting in Idaho, amongst many, many other ones. But these ideas of no evidence, again, like, you have to be intentionally not seeing it. Regarding the satanic ritual abuse, in that Geraldo episode from 87, we saw author Maury Terry, Ultimate Evil, talking about a case that he was investigating out of Long Island, and Lisa Steinberg murdered. The young girl had drawn pictures and crayons of, I think she was 7, ritual abuse, ritual circles, candles, robes, and symbols, as Maury Terry showed on that television program. Those same, we went over previously as well, folks, is those same circumstances, the drawings of the ritualistic activity, symbols and robes and whatnot, were drawn by the folks at Presidio, McMartin, Ukiah, in Kern County, California, which, as we saw in that propaganda campaign from the Devil Within You podcast, he speaks out both sides of his mouth in the same sentence by saying, oh, well, there was no satanic ritual abuse before McMartin, but he goes, except for this one case in Kern County the year prior. So, it's was there not any cases beforehand? Because you just said there wasn't, but then you're like, oh, wait, but yeah, there was, though, in fact. And we see more of that same propaganda, not only in that outlet with that podcast, The Devil Within You, again, a well-financed one as well. These aren't like some dude in the basement, or this ain't some dude in his, studio/RV dining room.
Some of the early allegations were in 1980 in Bakersfield, California, social workers had been reading the just published Michelle Remembers as part of their training when a number of children came forward to declare they had been molested as part of a clandestine local occult sex ring. 2 of the girls had been coached by a grandparent who was believed to have a history of mental illness. Over the coming months, their story of strange occult sex acts would grow more and more bizarre as they claimed to have been hung from hooks in their family's living room, forced to drink blood and watch ritual baby sacrifices, and much more. The fact that these social workers were reading...
So we can see there the use of the controlled opposition outside of tanking that McMartin case and many other things with the Michelle Remembers thing. Aside from it being a talking point on the telemarketing script of the Muppet Mikey Kino Psyops to Mind War, Satanic Panic, we see that they backdate it. So actually, the abuse in that case predates the publication of that book. That's what I'm saying. When we're broadly analyzing these things, I want to point that out, that occasionally they do point to a case before McMartin, but when they do, they frame it in a, bullshit Nazi Satanist propaganda way. Deception. Pay no attention to the Satanists murdering folks. Pay no attention to the satanic ritual abuse of children. There is no evidence. These are not the Satanists you're looking for, as Muppet Mikey Aquino, the Star Wars fan fiction author, would have you believe. But speaking of no evidence, and especially with the satanic ritual abuse stuff,
he has been studying this and other satanic cases. Why do you believe the satanic cult had something to do with this case of Lisa Steinberg?
Well, in the first instance, Geraldo, police removed demonology books from the Steinberg and Nussbaum apartment in New York. In the second place, I have seen writings done by Hedda Nussbaum, the adoptive mother of Lisa, if you will, in which she admitted that she was involved with a cult on Long Island that practiced rituals and conducted pornography and were involved in child pornography.
What's this?
Here is Hedda's diary.
This is her own diary?
Hedda's point book diary from 1983.
You can expect to be subpoenaed after this, sir.
Yes, and in it you can see here that Hedda was calling deprogrammers, cult deprogrammers, back in the fall of 1983 in order to try to get herself out of this group in Long Island that she had gotten involved with.
You have a sketch drawn by Lisa?
We found in the Steinberg apartment a sketch drawn by Lisa in her own hand.
Look at it, ladies and gentlemen.
That's drawn by Lisa Steinberg with the satanic pentagram on it and with the descending crescent moon above it.
But I'm confused, folks. I thought there was no evidence. And again, we see those same characteristics out of children at many, many of these incidents, including, Presidio, McMartin, Ukiah, etc. And in regards to that case, I like how, as he said, their adoptive daughter of sorts. Yeah, those folks had a child that wasn't theirs with no legal adoption, and that child died, murdered, it seems, under ritual circumstances. And lo and behold, the father there from Yonkers, New York, It's a real den of iniquity, folks, that Westchester County. If nuclear weapons were real, I would advocate it's being blown off the face of this earth. Anyhow, I'm trying to catch up here on some of the comments. Appreciate you folks joining me here tonight. Again, be finishing off this preview and heading on over to Patreon, getting into more of these topics here tonight and analyzing the 1980s, circa 80 through 92 there, Flap. And again, the telemarketing scripts that are being used by all of these folks, including until the modern day. A moral hysteria on how bad could a moral hysteria be? There's so many morals out. Yeah, well, again, yeah, I mean, that's a good comment there, Tara Jackson, on the nebulous nature of these statements about moral hysteria. Moral hysteria, what are these folks who are claiming these things? Are they some sort of moral high ground? We've seen some of the folks making these statements. I mean, look at Muppet Mikey Aquino. He's named in numerous child sexual abuse scandals, the least of which he's part of Phoenix program, Bill Colby's Phoenix program in Vietnam, Viet-fucking-Nam, Material Assistance Command of Bill Colby. And we know there was, according to all reports, again, I split the difference. The South Vietnamese government says 40,000 women and children were murked in the Phoenix program. The U.S. government says 26, so I call it 32. So, anyhow, these are the morals of the folks we're talking about. So I don't know if I'm really willing to believe that that's, Thomas Eugene Creech, he's a very interesting character. I like how old Muppet Mikey there mentions him in his Church of Satan autobiography, right? That's interesting. He's like, no. I mean, we had this guy Tom there, but, we didn't like Tom. And mind you, Aquino should never have known him, right? Should never have known him because according to some of Aquino's accounts, he was never there. He doesn't know these people. He was never there. There is no evidence. As we hear him even repeat his own telemarketing script over and over again. And that is the Sobs to Mind War, folks. These are not the Satanists you're looking for, says Star Wars fan fiction Muppet Mikey Aquino. And they, and again, part of that campaign, we unpack the principles in which he tells folks, he's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to convince them. We're going to keep reciting the same nonsense over and over and over until it becomes fact. We're going to use every method of media possible to transmit this message. And we know what they mean by possible when he embeds magic thelemic rituals, some Nazi rituals, in some of those audio recordings by his own admission in the Phoenix program to terrorize the local populations. And by terrorize them, I mean his principle, his game, if you will, which he kind of learned from Edward Lansdale, Bill Colby's associate there, and in many respects his mentor. Lansdale was also there in Saigon by numerous accounts with Bill Colby at the U.S. State Department headquarters running these missions and operations. So, and it is Lansdale who preceded Aquino weaponizing folklore and religion against the nation of the Philippines, convincing the locals. They did a Phoenix program, Operation Gladio, over there before, bringing it home, and before Vietnam, and they were convincing the locals that vampires were killing their up-and-coming politicians and whatnot because they would murk them, put 2 holes in their neck, drain their blood, and hang them upside down outside the village. Be like, oh shit, the jungle vampires got them. They got a name for the jungle vampire. I don't remember what it is, but so the morals of these folks, I don't know about morals, And of course, I don't know if I'm trying to catch up on the chat here. I don't know if our channel here is in the chat tonight. Every time I mention Bill Colby's AI ball washer bot, our channel pops up with some absolute nonsense. Usually likes to tell me it's to fight communism. Well, I look around and find a lot of communism. Muppet Mikey and gang, all these Nazi Satanists, they call themselves Nazis. Sometimes I think they're confused just generally in life, but more most of the time, but they call themselves Nazis. You also see them making very Marxist communist statements. So I don't see any difference in these ideologies. They all equal Marxism, communism, socialism, fascism. They all equal anti-liberty activities, which is not pro-America. And it's also not what I would call productive for anybody. So, but we do see these same matters over. So they're fighting communism. What the fuck? Why are they bringing it home? And why are they all making communist remarks about shit? So I never buy into that. Now that's part of the propaganda, folks. What I'm getting at, and I'm just trying to catch up here, folks of the interwebs, as we're bringing this Patreon previewing for a close. You can catch the rest of this show over on patreon.com/OperationGCD. But before we go over there, I want to point out again, this onset of the 1975 activity of the Satanic Panic, where we saw last week the evangelical movement, the Process Church joined the evangelical movement December 1st, 1974, right on time for the 75 flap. Mike Warnke, John Todd, devout Satanists and witches. Again, these folks use those terms interchangeably. But we saw that 1972 Time magazine article from Skull and Bones, Henry Luce's Time magazine. And they got like an 8-page article on that thing. And there was a lot of press there in 72. 75 is also when Muppet Mikey Aquino claims to have gotten real butthurt with LaVey and started the Temple of Set. I would argue this is no different than the Process offshoot of Scientology. It just becomes a dark wing. So there's something like an offshoot, because we have numerous reports of LaVey and Aquino continuing their friendship well into the 90s, 20 years after Aquino made statements and claims to never talked to LaVey again. And LaVey's daughter and son-in-law, Nicholas Schreck, a.k.a. Barry Dobin, that Nazi Satanist we saw from the Geraldo show, making a lot of Nazi statements. Him and his friend Tracy Twyman's mentor and founder, and also Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor's mentor and Marilyn Manson's mentor, Boyd Rice, one of the co-founders of the industrial rock movement. Saw him making a lot of Nazi statements too, along with Nicholas Schreck, Anton LaVey's son-in-law, married to Zena LaVey. They both joined the Temple of Set there in the 80s. So I don't think these are so much offshoots. There's something else going on there. These folks all know each other and keep doing the same things. It's not like they may be competing against one each other. I'll give them that. These egotistical sons of bitches, all these damn Satanist Nazi ceremonial magic folks, they all think they can do better than the next magician, right? We've seen that from all their own statements, including Muppet Mikey. But in 75, we do see that not only the evangelical movement we started unpacking last week, and flap number one of the first onset of the terms Satanic Panic and the cattle mutilations also revolving around July 1975 in Denver, Colorado, and Mike Warnke, fake former Satanist priest and, evangelical hero for many years until he was outed as being a complete fraud, along with his associate John Todd, were his they were kind of like the two show ponies of that movement. Again, John Todd, Kid Diddler rapist, he's dead now, but Kid Diddler rapist, and of course he was friends with Fred Springmeier, who's doing rounds with Ted Gunderson later once John Todd goes to prison. And then again, we see that same movement going to the QAnon Pizzagate movement. We see these same, and again, I'm not saying there's not validity to some of those things. We already saw there was a basement in Comet Ping Pong by the admission of the owner, James Elefantis. So these ideas are, again, the controlled opposition aspects of it. But we see the evolution of these propaganda campaigns and tactics and characters where folks like Tracy Twyman, Boyd Rice's protege, the Nazi Satanist from the Geraldo show we saw, again, the inventor of the Process Churchian industrial rock movement, including Process Churchians like Manson and Reznor, who recorded their first albums in the Tate Polanski Death House on Cielo Drive in a studio Reznor built called La Pig Studios, named after the murders of Tate and Polanski there, or the Tate Polanski house. The Tate Folger Wachowski parent, the murders of the Manson family on August 8th and August 9th, 1969. So, again, the Manson family, not only does the Ira Reiner know Manson, Barry Dobin, Nicholas Schreck, Zena LaVey there, all these folks, again, they all know each other. And again, LaVey and Aquino talk about how close they were to the Manson situation, how many of the folks they knew there, basically the whole family, in their book, in Aquino's book. So we see these kind of evolutions in that regard. But in 75, it's not just that evangelical movement, we see, and not just that Time magazine article. Suddenly LaVey's a very popular man on media, and we see him getting some media airtime in this one interview right here.
Do you believe in God? Do you believe in Jesus Christ?
No, irrevocably not. I believe that the Godhead resides within oneself. I believe that man creates gods in accordance with his own needs. And if he doesn't, someone else will create them for him.
Who or what is Satan to you?
Satan is the essence of that which dwells within myself.
Would you explicate this?
Satan is the pioneer, the inventor, Prometheus. Satan has always been the scapegoat, the other as Thomas Saz, the psychiatrist, calls him. He has always been the opposition to what has been established at the time, the counterbalance that creates change, that creates evolution, that sets the climate socially for modification. Because without this so-called evil, there could be no change.
Well, holy smokes, folks. He basically explains the process church, the final judgment theology, the reconciliation of opposites, the paper written by the Tavistock about social turbulence, controlling things through this method of there's always going to be evil. So that's interesting. These Nazi Satanists, they think alike. That's for damn sure. I'm just catching up here on some of the chats here. Yes, sir. Thank you much. And RR channel's here. Oh, I was getting disappointed. RR. I was like, I must be doing something wrong. I can't attract Bill Colby's AI ball washer. I don't know what else I'm doing wrong here. But yeah, what else? Oh, yes, sir. Thank you much, there, Donald Ferguson. So, we see the 75. We see an early push, not even just in the evangelical thing, the process church becoming the evangelical foundation, faith of God. And we packed some of that a little bit last week in analyzing the contemporary events to these matters during these different flaps. So we're going to look at some of the contemporary events like that Kern case again, some more of the statements about it, because that happens in 80. Well, it technically starts in 78, before Michelle Remembers is even published, but before the telemarketing script. And yes, sir, Gerald. He's a self-proclaimed Processian and Church of Satan. So these are not the statements. I'm not accusing these things. Oh, here we go. Bill Colby. Who killed Bill Colby and what? Well, RR, right now you're my number one suspect. I don't want to know where you were. You in Maryland in 96? Where were you at? So it is important to know these contemporary events, because again, they're like, oh, there's no evidence. Well, there's no evidence, and what the fuck's going on like right over there right now? While they're saying these statements. And again, even today, as we've gone over broadly already here in the series, there's ongoing satanic ritual abuse cases. Well, they're not very formal about the Satan part anymore publicly, but there's ongoing ritual abuse cases from coast to coast on military installations right now. In fact, the U.S. or the Department of Defense Inspector General's office has been involved in numerous cases and investigations this year alone. So that's not a local investigation. That's an up-channeled investigation. It's a big difference. So, and we saw how the U.S. Army did investigate a lot of things, and according to their reports, relative to like the Presidio, or even that Ukiah case, which was on civilian territories about an hour and a half north of the Presidio, back where Jim Jones and his Jonestown folks, before they went to Jonestown, French Guiana, they were up there. They basically owned Ukiah. So it's weird that Aquino was there showing up in witness reports of satanic ritual abuse in the 80s. But nonetheless, the U.S. Army CID investigated that as well. And as by all appearances, it seems like shit got shut down from that national security. And, it's not just as we saw on the 6 Degrees of Muppet Mikey Aquino a couple weeks back. We saw LaVey's connections to a lot of matters of mafia, national security, and the San Francisco Police Department, which he was a badge carrying member. So, as a criminologist there. So, these things are very interesting to consider when we continue to see the same repeating patterns there. But, we see also in 75, we saw in that 72 article in Time Magazine, right? The same year Warren Keep publishes his book, the evangelical former Satanist guy from the 75 flap. We see there in 72, Time Magazine's like, oh, you need a substitute religion, try Satanism, right? And that's because they need to build a framework. But we also saw 2 media reports, right? We saw 2 movies. The one with John Travolta, which LaVey was the technical advisor in Devil's Ring. We saw the one with Laurel Canyonite there, Young Turk, Peter Fonda, The Devil Rides. And I missed one. Also in 75, we have a film called Satan's Children. Even more disturbing than the previous ones. Let's take a look. So again, it's not just it's the promotion of these ideas, while also saying the counterpoint, right? The counterbalance, as we were just seeing there, is the evangelical movement. We see that's these controlled assholes there too, right? I think y'all get the idea, the impression what I'm trying to make. They're trying to scare the shit out of folks. So back to like the vampires in the Philippines with Lansdale, Aquino's mentor and Bill Colby there. They're weaponizing religion against Americans. They're weaponizing Christianity. They're scaring the shit out of folks. And then we can see that again in this instances such as that. And then the tomfoolery that persists around it with, there's no evidence, the telemarketing script of Aquino psyops to mind war. And then productions like this film in recent years, I believe this was 2021 maybe. And, it's not a high budget film, but it does star a number of A-list folks in there. That one dude, Jerry McConnell and his wife, Rebecca Romaine Stamos, I think maybe. Yeah, former wife of John Stamos, right?
4 hours, my total earnings are unexpired.
This one's called
Applebee's
Satanic
coupon.
Panic Trailer,
That's
or
almost
the
like
trailer
this.
for a movie called Satanic Panic.
You're sad. Oh,
Deliver from your basement.
I'll do it.
It's just the preposterous nature they're trying to make these things into, right? So on top of the whole campaign of the Psyops to Mind War, then the production of and promoting things through Time Magazine and through films, and then it's the bastardization of, you think there's Satanists out there killing folks and raping kids? You must have watched that silly movie Satanic Panic.
Are you ready to make an investment in your future? Yes. Are you ready to take back what you are owed? Yes. Are you ready to fully commit yourself to Satan? Yes. Who are you?
I'm the pizza guy. A girl? Are you by any chance a virgin? That's a very personal question.
She's a virgin. Whose power unlocks our true potential?
Do you have any idea what's happening here tonight? They are summoning Baphomet, the big demon from hell. And when that clock strikes 12, he's gonna rip you open.
Where's my virgin?
I don't know what's happening. My mom and her butt buddies are booty calling Baphomet, and they're not going to stop until you're strapped to a barbed wire altar. That's bonkers.
Any idea why the rich stay rich and you stay screwed?
Better healthcare. They are stronger than us.
A virgin, no sacrifice. Let me protect you.
I think you folks get the point there of the preposterous nature they perpetrate on these things, right? And it's copycat stuff for sure. Yeah. Oh no, yeah, for sure. If that's a good comment there. Appreciate it there, Doug. National security were run like Jonestown. We'd all be drinking grape Kool-Aid NDAs and pretending it was freedom. Well, I think that's kind of where we're at today here in America. That seems like an apt description of life in America here in post-meme world 2025, where 2020 changed the world, back in the summer of love and our Lord and Savior, St. George Floyd. These matters changed the world in those communist enterprises and Marxist takeovers of America. Had a lot of, what used to be memes suddenly became reality, it seems, around that time. And, and what used to be meme and then reality now seems to be some sort of post-apocalyptic Philip K. Dick nightmare. But, grape Kool-Aid included, perhaps, free rounds for everybody. So on that note, folks of the interwebs, appreciate y'all joining me here. Thank y'all for joining me to get a little GCD. Appreciate y'all joining me here for this Thursdays on Saturdays. And we're going to be getting into more of these matters here going forward here tonight on the Patreon side. See you folks over there momentarily. If y'all catch this broadcast in the future, please pop over there and join us. Fellow Patreon subscribers, appreciate your support and look forward to your feedback and commentary as we go through more of these matters here. And tomorrow, Operation GCD Sundays for those Patreon subscribers who do the combo, Operation GCD live combos. Please check out 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. JJ, that's me, meets the Unabomber, sorta. So I'm going to be unpacking my instances where I had an adventure to Lincoln, Montana, home of the Unabomber. So a wedding party there. It was an interesting experience back in July of 1999. Partied like it was 1999. And this is right after the events. A lot of Unabomber talk. A lot of Unabomber talk at my base I was stationed at there in Montana, because his cabin had been stored there at Malmstrom Air Force Base, about an hour and a half from Lincoln. And as I looked into these matters more, and this fact that he's the sole, the standard lone nut, right? He's an MK Ultra guy, not unlike Charles Manson and gang. So there's a lot of things going on around here. And I believe, as we'll dive into more some tomorrow night, we'll find that he had an intersection with Donald Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, there at MIT. So strange circumstances and environments we live in here, folks, here in good old America. But thank you all again for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD, and I will see you folks there on the Patreon side. Well, I'll leave you with one clip here. As we're looking at these telemarketing scripts, and we're gonna be comparing more of those things again. I did make this highlight reel starring Uncle Ted Gunderson there and his lasers.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
In the trailer, it mentioned a book called Michelle Remembers. Can you tell us about that book, Michelle Remembers, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Victoria, so Michelle Remembers is by two authors from Victoria.
Which some Canadian psychiatrist said that his wife, under hypnosis, had recalled being mangled, by the Church of Satan when she was a kid. Well, we never had any Church of Satan in Canada.
Station at the preschool. The author of Michelle Remembers, co-author of Michelle Remembers, Lawrence Pazder, comes to speak to the parents about the crimes of satanic ritual abuse and what to look for and that type of thing. So you have all the makings of a moral panic, and then Ted Gunderson comes in too.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
The reason that it fizzled out as a fad, finally the FBI did a major study on the whole notion of satanic child abuse and just said this whole thing is a crock, and there's never been one verified instance of it anywhere.
I personally come from a really cynical, skeptical family, so there's a couple characters in the film that I think people can learn a lot from. The FBI agent Ken Lanning and the investigative journalist Debbie Nathan. I think everyone needs some more skepticism in their lives. Ask people questions, ask why, right? And also take the time to think.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
Martin, and you can see, because this comes into play later on, Ted Gunderson claimed to find tunnels underground in McMartin, but it seems if kids were talking about tunnels at McMartin, there were these colorful boxes that were built by one of the people who ran the McMartin preschool, and they would make these tunnels that the kids could go through. They would usually put them in this kind of horseshoe formation, and they could crawl about through the boxes. So those are the real tunnels of McMartin.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
They got Ted twice, folks. Watch out. Maybe Ted should have hidden them tunnels, right? Anyhow, thank you all for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD, and I'll catch you folks over there on the Patreon side here momentarily. And catch you other folks here tomorrow night. Operation GCD Sundays, live Sundays, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standards. JJ, that's me, meets the Unabomber, sorta. And on that note, folks, catch you next time.
Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend in the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GC. Yeah, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GCD. Hey, world's a puzzle, brunch rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, light things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze.
Boom!